Flowers and the Human Intellect. This is a quote from the book of Matthew. It says, "Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They toil not, neither do they spin. And yet I say unto you that even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these." So this lecture is meant to be both informative but also visually engaging. Of the estimated 300,000 species of land plants alive in the world today, about 260,000, 87%, are flowering plants. This is from the book Flowers, How They Changed the World by William C. Berger. So for our overview, we asked the question, why are we attracted to flowers? Which, if you think about it, why should we be attracted to flowers? Why do human beings love flowers, and why are they so important in our individual and collective lives? Our attraction to flowers is demonstrated by the central roles they play and have played in our history and culture, both past and present. The roles flowers play in our culture and lives are indicative and representative of their importance and the importance of plants in general to our survival as a species. We will see that just as the attraction engendered by physical beauty improved our species' survival, finding flowers beautiful also improved our survival and helped shape our intellect. So what attracts humans to flowers? Well, it's their beauty, fragrance, and of course, the colors. So thinking of how flowers sort of interact with our mind and mental thinking, humans have an innate, intimate, and emotional attachment to flowers. As you can see, we use them in all aspects of our lives. We use them as language to express and convey affection, sympathy, and goodwill. You can go anywhere in the world, present someone with a bouquet of flowers, and they immediately know that you are someone they can trust. Flowers are able to speak to and for us in this way because we find them moving and, of course, beautiful. So then that brings up the question, what is beauty? Beauty is an experience of the mind that is rooted in our brain, of course. But the perception of beauty is a primal phenomenon that is hardwired into our genes. We are so familiar with what we think of as things that are beautiful and what we find beautiful that we oftentimes don't realize that beauty is an important biological experience. Beauty is special and important because it creates desire, which influences and compels our behavior. So why does beauty exist? Beauty is an evolutionary imperative because beauty signals health and fitness. That's key. When you see something and it strikes you as beautiful, it's telling you something about whatever it is that you're looking at, that this is something that is good for you, in essence. The pursuit of beauty confers survival advantages, both for individuals and for our species as a whole. Research has shown that physical beauty, those things that we find physically beautiful in each other, correlate with health and reproductive fitness. So beauty is not a random subjective perception. It is a DNA-encoded, biologically driven phenomenon that improves our survival. Again, key concepts. If it were able to conceive of such a thing, elephant poo would be perceived as beautiful by a dung beetle because that's what they eat, that's where they raise their young, and it's important for their survival. So this begs the questions, why do humans find flowers beautiful? This brings up my first hypothesis. The reason we find flowers beautiful is because our attraction to flowers and flowering plants correlates with physical health, improved survival for our social group, and greater longevity for us as individuals. So let's look at flowers, fragrance, and human cultures. We seek to make ourselves more attractive by decorating ourselves and our homes with flowers, both literally and figuratively. We apply flowers to ourselves either directly or graphically as floral prints. We name our children after them, violet, rose, hyacinth, and we perfume ourselves with their scents. Our love, desire, and need for flowers is so great that we even create silk, cloth, paper, and plastic copies of them so that we can have facsimiles of flowers when they aren't in season. Flowers decorate, enliven, and mediate all of the great events of our lives. When you really think about that, that's pretty compelling, which include births, courtships, feasts, marriages, funerals, and all types of celebrations. Again, why do we love these things so much? And then when you look at the role flowers have played throughout history, and certainly Western history, there was the great tulip madness that took hold in 17th century Holland, where the entire economy of the country became based upon the trade in tulip bulbs. And it lasted until a viral illness came through that destroyed all of the tulip bulbs and caused the collapse of the Dutch economy. And then in 19th century England, a wave of mania took over, where wealthy Englishmen were traveling the world looking for exotic orchids, spending the equivalent of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars to find what they considered the most beautiful, most exotic orchid. So again, flowers have exerted an incredibly compelling influence on our behavior throughout history. The modern floral industry is quite simply huge. Annual retail sales of cut flowers in the U.S. reach in excess of $20 billion a year. The trade in flowers is a worldwide industry. 70% of the cut flowers sold in the U.S. are imported from around the globe. Countries exporting flowers to the U.S. include Colombia, Ecuador, the Netherlands, Mexico, Costa Rica, and others. Now, I argue that it may be that the application of color to women's faces as makeup is actually a subconscious attempt to make the woman's face mimic a flower. And when accompanied by the application of floral scented perfumes, the unconscious mimicry is accentuated. The scents of flowers and plants are utilized in every aspect of our lives, including the ways we worship. Aromatics in the form of incense have traditionally been used in religious ceremonies the world over to represent and facilitate communication with divine beings. And compounds and frankincense, for instance, have been shown to have antidepressant and anti-anxiety properties. They also have very potent anti-inflammatory properties and can be used to treat arthritis and other inflammatory conditions. These compounds appear to affect neuron ion channels in much the same way that modern SSRI drugs do. And this picture is a representation of the wise men, or the Magi, visiting Jesus as a baby, bringing him gifts of frankincense, myrrh, and gold. So, questions I want you to ponder as we move through this. Why do we seek to surround ourselves with flowers? What survival advantages does this fascination with and pursuit of flowers confer on us? What survival and fitness signals are these flowers or their surrogates sending to us? And why should wearing flowers or smelling like them make us more attractive and or cause us to be perceived, and this is really interesting, as more desirable mates? Because flowers are used quite extensively in courtship. So now we're going to look at flowers and their fragrances. And this is a quote from Macbeth. It says, "Here's the smell of the blood still. All the perfumes of Arabia will not sweeten this little hand." The human love affair with plants is not new, as we humans have always likely perfumed ourselves and our homes with the fragrances of flowers and other plants. Ancient cultures such as Egyptians, Israelites, Greeks, Medes, Persians, and Romans, as well as cultures from other societies, all had well-developed perfume industries. Rose oil, frankincense, myrrh, and other botanicals were widely prized, widely used, and extensively traded throughout the ancient world. And then again, the modern perfume and fragrance industry is also extremely big business, with annual retail sales in excess of $5 billion in the US alone. The scents of plants in the form of perfumes and colognes have incredibly powerful effects on us. They can affect and change our mood and actually help stimulate and intensify sexual desire. It is indicative of the importance in our history as a species that the fragrances of plants can and do have such profound effects on our behavior, mood, and motivations. And this just in. A recent double-blind study showed that women preferred the body scent of vegetarian and vegan men over men who ate meat. It's all about keto crotch. So let's look at fragrance and desire. What is fascinating is that many carnivores will roll in rotting carcasses and other fetid substances to make themselves more desirable. This is a Fireside cartoon that says Rusty makes his move. You can see he's got a can of dog breath. He's trying trying to get something going here. So the question is, if we are natural meat eaters, then why don't we arrive at our date's door wearing scraps of meat and smelling like putrid flesh rather than covering ourselves with flowers? Consumers also spend hundreds of billions of dollars on scented cleaning and hygiene products. The vast majority of the annual trade in fragrances and aromatics is actually for industrial use to provide scents for an endless variety of consumer goods. In addition to our perfumes and colognes, we want our kitchens, lemony fresh, our bathrooms pine scented, our laundry to remind us of mountain meadows, and our homes smelling like spring flowers. And here are just some examples of all those products. So again, why do we love and need the scents of these plants so much? What is the point and purpose of this deep-seated love we have for plant aromatics? Well, this brings up the concept of flowers, fragrance, and how they impact our health. Because again, remember, attraction is a biological phenomenon. It's telling you to do something because it improves your survival. So we are trying to ascertain, why are we so attracted to not just flowers, but also the way they smell? Aromatherapy uses essential oils and other scented products, compounds for flowers and plants to treat depression, mood disorders, and other health problems. Many, if not most, of our medications and medicinal compounds that we've historically used to treat and cure diseases either come from plants or are plant derivatives, and that's still true today. Flowers are also used as components of a number of pharmaceutical and medicinal compounds, and here are some examples. So we got echinacea blossoms, which are used to boost immune response to cold, influenza, and other viral type infections. The heart medicine digitoxin was derived from cardiac glycosides found in the flowers of the foxglove plant. And we know vitamin C and bioflavonoids are found in rose hips as well as other types of flowers and botanicals. When we look at the phytochemicals in food, flower and plant components used in the perfume and fragrance industry include terpenes, monoterpenes, indoles, phenols, citrus notes, among other aromatics. When we include these same compounds in our diets, plant compounds have been shown to have powerful antioxidant, anti-cancer, and other protective effects that can prevent and or cure disease and help combat the effects of aging and day-to-day stress. The reason we are attracted to these scents is because they are compounds that have health benefits for us when we ingest them. In a sense, when our brain smells these things, it's assuming that we have consumed the plant foods or plant products that make these compounds, so that is why our brain is to perceive them. It never imagined that we would go to Popeyes and have a big bacon cheeseburger and then spray perfume all over ourselves. Nature didn't account for that. This is just a list of antioxidants and phytochemicals, and you see that on the left-hand side, it gives you the class that these things are found in: allylic sulfides, bioflavonoids, catechins, curcumin, genistein, indoles, isoflavones, isothiocyanates, lignans. They have all of the health benefits outlined in the middle column, and then on the right-hand side, it tells you where they're found in plant foods. I'm not gonna leave this up for a huge amount of time, but know that Jeff is currently taping this lecture, and it will be posted to my website, so you can go back and look at these things. This is from nutritionfacts.org. Says the same garlic dose that blocked nearly 80% of cancer cell proliferation appeared to have no effect whatsoever against normal cells. So in other words, these compounds are selective against disease-causing cells and compounds. And similar results were found with the other allium and cruciferous vegetables. In other words, vegetables are selective. They destroy cancer cells, leave normal cells alone. What are your allium vegetables? Onions and garlic and leeks and, yes, shallots. Those are your allium vegetables. What about the cruciferous ones? Broccoli, kale, cauliflower. Arugula is a good question. I'm not sure about arugula, but I know that mustard greens, cabbage, collard greens, and y'all didn't mention my favorite one, Brussels sprouts. Oh, yeah. Yes. Well, here are some more antioxidants and phytochemicals. And again, please understand that the plant world is loaded with these compounds. And the greater the variety of plants that you eat, the greater the benefit you reap. So again, you got limonoids, lycopene, monoterpenes, omega-3 fatty acids, phenolic acids, proteases, quercetin, and terpenes. Again, the middle column shows you all the lovely things they do to help you. And then on the right, it can be found in citrus fruits, basil, flaxseed, walnuts, wheat germ, variety of berries, soybean, grapes and grape skins, and again, other citrus fruits. Now let's look more closely at phenolic acids. These are some fruit polyphenolics. So again, this is where you find these compounds in your berries and fruits. And they do, again, all sorts of amazing things because the phenolics are divided into flavonoids, simple phenolics, and then hydrocyanothionates. Blueberries are rich in hydrocyanothionates and anthocyanins. This is just to try and get you guys to see what a phenomenal powerhouse plants are in terms of their health benefits. Looking at some other phytonutrients found in a variety of different brightly colored fruits and vegetables. And that's the key, ladies and gentlemen. You want color in your diet because the more brightly colored and varied the food, the healthier it is for you. I would also argue that's also true of your friends. All right, this is just to give you a sense of how powerful these antioxidants can be. Trolox is an artificial cell-permeable water derivative of vitamin E. Look at the antioxidant ability of all these different foods. It's just phenomenal. Again, blueberries are going to be your lead the list, but the point is you want to use all of them as often as you can, and then those can be broken down into phenolics, catechins, terpenes, monoterpenes, limonoids. Remember, those are the same things that give plants their scent. Okay, so again, what your brain is trying to tell you by making you attracted to the scents that come from these plant foods is that if you eat them, they will make you healthy, help you live longer, and help your body fight off disease. By the way, I just have to say this. You guys have no idea how long it took me to make this slide, so just know that. Thank you. It's like, it looks easy, but it was a lot of work. Now, this is really cool because this was a study that was done on lab rats, and they took rats that had learned their way through mazes and then gotten so old they either couldn't remember how to get through the maze or they had muscle problems and couldn't make it through by walking. And then when they fed them spinach, strawberries, cranberries, black currants, purple grape juice, plum juice, blueberries, and walnuts, guess what? They were able to remember how to get through the maze again. And then they fed them these foods over here, and there's things that make both lists: cranberries, purple grape juice, blueberries, strawberries, and walnuts, and it improved their motor function. Again, this is not in any way to be a approval of using animals in experiments, but it is just to show you that plant foods definitely can improve both our memory and our ability to function better. And then this is a study from the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine that showed that strawberries reduce risk for Alzheimer's disease and improve memory. Special antioxidant pigments in berries and dark green leafy vegetables make them brain food of the fruit and vegetable kingdom. Blueberries can significantly improve cognitive performance within hours of consuming them. So this brings up my second hypothesis. The reason we like the smell of and to smell like plants and flowers is due to our coevolution with these organisms. Our brains recognize in the sense of plants and flowers the presence of phytochemicals that promote and signal health and improve fertility and longevity, and that confer protection from infections and chronic diseases. And it says, I am the rose of Sharon and the lily of the valleys. Song of Solomon, 2nd chapter, verse 1. So again, from the book on flowering plants, without flowering plants, we humans and our grand civilizations simply wouldn't be here. It's from Flowers, How They Changed the World by William C. Berger. So now let's look at flowers as symbols and agents of exchange. So flowers are used as agents of courtship in almost every culture in the world. Men and women decorate themselves with flowers and present flowers to each other as symbols of their fitness as mates. And we tend to respond favorably to seeing and or being given flowers. And think about that for a moment. Why should presenting someone with these, granted pretty, but rather useless plant parts make us feel so good and make us think, this one's a keeper? That's almost bizarre. It won't be bizarre to you in a minute because you'll understand what it's actually telling you. Since we don't eat flowers, why are we moved emotionally when we are presented to them. Somebody comes to pick you up for a date and they got a bouquet of flowers, you're like, all right. Turns out that humans also tend to respond favorably to being presented with rocks and pieces of metal, as long as those rocks are jewels and the pieces of metal are gold, silver, or platinum. Now, if I came to my date's door with some gravel and a scrap iron I picked up on the way, she wouldn't be nearly as happy to see me as if I showed up with a diamond ring and a gold necklace. So the point is this: the perceived value of a gift is based upon the imputed value of the object given. Again, the perceived value of a gift is based upon the imputed value of the object given. So what imputed values do flowers have? They are usually not eaten, they don't last very long, and they don't have any resale value. Yet we are still very moved and gratified when we receive them. So why? It's of course clear how somebody bearing diamonds and gold has demonstrated his or her fitness as a mate. But why do flowers make a person a potentially more desirable mate? What are the imputed fitness and survival advantages of flowers? Flowers are not endpoints, they are beginnings. They are harbingers of what is to come. These are peach blossoms. And this brings up my third and central hypothesis. The value of flowers is simply this: if you know where to find flowers, you know where to find food. I need y'all to really grasp that point, because flowers are harbingers of future food. And so for a species that was dependent on plants for eating, you'd be much happier to see someone show up who would be able to find food to feed you than somebody that came with, some rotten carcass that would kill you if you actually ate it. Today, flowering plants provide more than 90% of our caloric intake, again, from Flowers, How They Changed the World by William C. Berger. And this brings up, again, the concept of food as currency. Food is important because it is central to the existence of every living creature. It is the original and really only true primary currency. This fact is understood at some level by all higher organisms, from arthropods on up. All the myriad forms of invented human currencies ultimately derive their value from food, however indirectly. If one could conceivably invent a form of currency that could not in some way be used to obtain food, it would have no value. What good is it? This is because food equals life. For those of us living in the 21st century, it is perhaps difficult to understand and appreciate the true importance and centrality of food to our survival. This is because for us, food is a given. You go to the store, you open the refrigerator, there it is. It's ever present, accessible, easy to come by. However, this phenomenon of readily available and reliable food resources is a new and unprecedented phenomenon in human history. For the vast majority of our histories as a species, food had been relatively scarce, subject to the caprice of nature, and until relatively recently, the desire, need, and search for food had been the prime motivating force in human societies, as it is in all other free living animals. And that's even more so than sex, because obviously if you're starving to death, you can't have good sex. Perhaps the importance of food to humans is best and most clearly demonstrated by the central roles it plays in our lives, families, cultures, cultural interactions, celebrations, social intercourse, and interpersonal discourse. And this is from Michael Pollan's book, The Botany of Desire. He says, people who were drawn to flowers and who further could distinguish among them and then remember where in the landscape they saw them would be much more successful foragers than people who were blind to their significance. And that's absolutely true. Those humans who recognized that flowers were precursors of food, remembered where they saw them, and came back in a couple of weeks to harvest the food that was now available, those are the ones that made other little humans and ultimately made us. The ones that were just bumbling around and didn't recognize the importance of flowers, they're not here anymore. And this is his book, The Botany of Desire. And this is from Steven Pinker. He says, natural selection was bound to favor those among our ancestors who noticed flowers and had a gift for botanizing, for recognizing plants, classifying them, and then remembering where they grow. And time, that moment of recognition, much like the quickening that women feel when they're pregnant, would become pleasurable and the signifying thing a thing of beauty. Furthermore, it can be argued our attraction to flowers and our recognition of their importance and significance drew us out of the trees and away from a purely arboreal existence. Our fascination obsession with and pursuit of flowering and fruiting plants led us onto the savanna and beyond and turned us into peripatetic adventurers. It led us to become the most wide-ranging and successful ape species and spurred our intellectual development and adaptability. So now I'm going to spend some time raising great expectations. That is, tearing down this idiotic hunting hypothesis that people try to argue that, oh, well, we were hunters, we were eating meat. No, we weren't. The question he's asking, he says, am I implying this relationship that we developed with plants was before or after speech came? I would say that it certainly had to start before speech, but it probably developed concurrently with it. This says Jurassic calendars. And if you look at what he's doing every day, it says chase something, kill something and eat it, kill something and eat it. Doesn't require a lot of brain power to do that. Now, there's this theory that cooperative hunting and meat eating spurred the development of human intelligence. Well, I got a counter argument to that. There are many species of predators. None are exceptionally bright. And it says, I lift, you grab. Was that concept a little too complex, Carl? Social predator species also show no tendencies towards developing complex language abilities or even above average intelligence. So I ask you, if meat eating leads to big brains and intelligence, then why can't my neighbor's cat send me an email? And why is the dog still drinking from the toilet? And even when there's a family night, the dog has this little hookup. And when this is a Far Side cartoon depicting what people imagine would happen when people were trying to hunt. But ultimately, this dynamic is completely sexist because, you know, supposedly women were standing around waiting for men to bring home the bison. As you know from my lecture on anatomy and physiology, no species of animal on this planet exists where the female of the species is unable to procure the diet she needs both for her own health and to support a pregnancy and raise her kids. So this idea that, you know, women just stand around waiting on men is complete male bovine fertilizer. It postulates that women were wholly dependent on men and needed us to procure their diet, which is ridiculous. And if hunting is responsible for human intelligence, so let's just for a minute say, okay, maybe hunting was, then why are women at least as intelligent as men? Many would argue they're far more intelligent. Then it would be that only the men who had the large brains and the women were just kind of, you know, sort of pinheads sitting around going, you got some food? But clearly that's not the case. And the ultimate dynamic is unidimensional. You know, you're trying to chase something and kill it. And if you notice, we're getting our butts kicked here because with Stone Age technology, it is very difficult to bring down a healthy animal. Starvation, injury, foodborne illness all lead to early death and depletion of the family in these cases. And that may be why Neanderthals are no longer in existence, since many people postulated that Neanderthals ate a meat-heavy diet. In any event, it doesn't take a lot of brain power to chase something and kill it. So she says, and now there go the Wilsons. Seems like everybody's evolving but us. There used to be two separate, distinct species of humans, Homo sapiens and Homo neanderthalensis. Modern humans are Homo sapiens. Neanderthals are extinct, and most authorities have concluded they did not contribute any or very much genetic material to the modern human gene pool. Neanderthals never numbered more than 10,000 individuals and are believed to have never developed writing, music, or sophisticated language, cultures, and technology of Homo sapiens. Here's some Homo sapiens teasing the Neanderthals. Can't make fire, can't make spear, right? Neanderthals are believed to have eaten a primarily meat-based diet, and since plant-derived phytochemicals and antioxidants improve and potentiate fertility, a dearth of these nutrients can help explain why they were never very numerous. Clearly, their lifestyle did not equate with evolutionary success or species survival. Hunting would have exposed Neanderthals to all of the dangers, vagaries, and vicissitudes of a predatory lifestyle, including early death, because they just really weren't very bright. Anatomical deformities due to apparent nutritional deficiencies and periods of food scarcity are common findings in Neanderthal fossils, as is evidence of frequent fractures, infections, and joint diseases. Also, because dietary antioxidants and phytochemicals augment and preserve mental functioning, their absence suggests that Neanderthals, again, weren't very bright. And that's why he had to write, I will not act primitive in class. Clearly, building one's culture and economy around such a non-sustainable form of food gathering as hunting is a recipe for injury, starvation, and ultimately extinction. And he went to see the psychic, and she says, I see your little petrified skull labeled and resting on a shelf somewhere. Another reason that hunting just doesn't make sense is because when you look at the energy content of wild plant foods and wild animals, they're essentially equal. Because remember, animals that are alive in nature are not lazy, obese, fat-laden animals. They are creatures that have very lean tissues and carry around very little excess body weight because they got to be able to run for their lives when necessary. Study by Dr. Boyd Eaton from Emory University showed that when he analyzed wild game and compared it to wild plant foods, the energy content was 1.41 to 1.29. You round that up and down, it's 1.4 versus 1.3 calories per gram. That is no significant difference. But they are nutritionally very different. And then this article that popped up, it's the article where he outlined this information, Paleolithic nutrition, consideration of its nature and current implications, to try and help people get rid of this idea that early humans were running around trying to hunt. It doesn't make sense. The nutrient contents of wild foods are not equal. Plant foods have more fiber, vitamins, antioxidants, and other phytochemicals that promote health, fight disease, and increase our longevity. In this setting, no intelligent creature would waste time and energy to risk hunting. Doesn't make sense. You get far better nutrition from the plant foods without risking injury than you would run around chasing something that you didn't catch. While hunting may employ a limited use of cooperation and coordinated activity, human plant gathering entails a more sophisticated use of these and other skills because you have to harvest, you have to cache, you have to remember where you saw these things in your environment. Humans became specialists at gathering specific high-energy, nutrient-dense plant foods like seeds, grains, legumes, roots, tubers, and nuts, in addition to leafy plants and fruits. This is another article called The Seed Eaters by Clifford Jolly, again, where he argues that what distinguishes early human societies is not hunting, it's the gathering of plant foods, and that seeds, utilizing the grains from the grasses growing on the savanna, would give us much more energy and much more nutrition than running around trying to kill an animal that we'd have a problem eating. So this is my hypothesis. Hunting is a plot devised by women. Why would they do that? Well, think about it. Hunting is time-consuming and inefficient. In Stone Age society, more than 80% of the calories consumed are provided by gathering efforts of women. So I say hunting was invented by women to give men something to do and keep us out of trouble. Men sent off to hunt, hang out with other guys, spend all day chasing things they never or rarely catch. Then they come home exhausted, too tired to get into mischief, and so hungry they cling to their mates for the food they've already gathered. And this is depicted by this next slide. She says it could be worse. He could be out chasing you know what. So this brings up my fourth hypothesis: how flowers and plants influence the development of human intelligence. This is actually from Richard Heyer's book. He's a psychologist at UC Irvine. He says, it looks like intelligence is built on fundamental cognitive processes like attention and memory and maybe language ability. So how did those processes come to be? Well, let's talk about flowers and the hallmark of human intelligence, which includes curiosity and paying attention, inductive reasoning, complex language ability, the ability to extrapolate one principle to a novel situation, the ability to plan and then use abstract reasoning. So color is part of the language of flowers that has been deciphered by humans. Humans possess energetically and physiologically expensive trichromatic color vision, which gives us the ability to perceive an almost infinite variety of colors. It's been estimated we can distinguish between 10 million different hues. Our brains not only recognize colors as signals, but our minds have taken the additional step of investing colors with emotion and meaning. Framing colors this way gives them the ability to motivate us, change our behavior, and to affect and alter our mood. Now, when that picture came up, everybody just kind of went, oh, right? Because it's so pretty. The predilection for diversity is hardwired in us. Research has shown humans are drawn to brightly colored objects, and the more diverse the colors, the more we are attracted and our interest is stimulated and our attention is engaged. This desire for diversity presupposes an innate curiosity, which is, of course, a prerequisite for intelligence. With their bright and varied colors, flowers helped induce and stimulate our curiosity and desire for diversity. Research into food preferences has shown that a meal containing brightly colored foods stimulates the appetite and leads us to consume a wider assortment of foods. Of course, there are health benefits. Research has also shown that brightly colored plants contain antioxidants and phytochemicals that protect against disease and improve fertility, increase longevity. See, this is why we like these things. Thus, our attraction to brightly colored plant foods and the fragrances of plants acts as a kind of innate health insurance to ensure that we consume a broad array of disease-fighting and health-protective plant compounds. Because you see, nature never anticipated that we were going to create food coloring and take a bunch of bland garbage and just paint it up and make it look nice. There are important nutrients distributed throughout the plant kingdom that industrialized, urbanized humans may not have easy access to because of the way that we have artificially restricted our diets through urbanization, agriculture, and animal-based eating patterns. Studies have also shown that the mere presence of flowers at a meal will stimulate diners to eat even more food. This has been demonstrated through research. Curiosity and desire for diversity led us to investigate and exploit a wider range of plant foods than any other animal. This ability and flexibility equipped us to develop diverse and adaptable cultures that have enabled us to explore and colonize all parts of the globe, which is why we are so successful as a species. So recognizing the relationship between flowers and its eventual derivative, the fruits, helped us develop intelligence. Because once this dynamic is understood, even though the flowers themselves are not eaten, they have value for what they represent. Thus, flowers came to be seen as symbols and eventually to be used as a kind of language. And if you think about what language is fundamentally, language is the ability to create sounds or written depictions that represent something else in the environment. So I hold this up and I say, what is this? You guys will say, it's a pencil or pen. Well, I can't do anything with the word pencil or pen, but I certainly can do something with this. So learning that relationship to create a symbol or a sound to represent something else is the fundamentals of language. And plants taught us how to do that because flowers represent something else of importance. Understanding the concept and use of symbols would have been an important and early step in the development of humankind's spoken and then written languages. Learning to associate the flower symbol with its eventual derivative object, the fruit, may have spurred the formation and use of words, which are symbols, to represent objects in our environment. The use of symbols and sounds to represent objects is, of course, by definition, language. The impetus for the development of language would have been the desire and necessity of being able to communicate to others the location and timing of specific fruiting plants in the environment. And while language would be very useful for and facilitate foraging for plant foods, it's much less useful and even counterproductive when hunting because you need to keep your mouth shut so you can sneak up on somebody. And this I find fascinating. Our communication ability allowed us to become a superorganism, much like a honeybee hive, relying on and exploiting flowering plants and culturally evolving and changing with them. Their success improved our success and vice versa. Much like flowering plants directed the structure and shape of the honeybee superorganism, the collective flowering and fruiting of plants helped shape the communication abilities of humans and the structure of our societies. And I would argue to you that there are only two social groups of beings on this planet that have developed true language. It's humans and honeybees. Because while all other animals have a suite of sounds that they make that communicate certain ideas to individuals, they aren't able to develop a syntax for those sounds to communicate novel information. A group of wolves can say, don't, issue a warning bark that there's danger over there, but they can't tell their pack mates, go down about 3 miles, turn left, head another 2 miles, and then turn right, and you're gonna find some food. But we can do that, and so can honeybees. This is how powerful flowering plants can be on the development of a society. And some people have argued that in reality, plants are actually farming us by giving us oxygen until we eventually decompose so they can then turn around and consume us. Plants taught us how to extrapolate and discover relationships in the environment. And you remember the distributive property of mathematics is if A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C, right? Well, once people learn to recognize that the flowers in a tree eventually resulted in fruit on that tree, when they saw flowers elsewhere in their environment, they're like, hey, if I come back in a few days, I may find some food here, just like I did on that tree. And learning to recognize that relationship allowed us again to exploit a much wider range of plant foods than other animals. Understanding the relationship between the flower and its fruit and then the seed and its plant is a prerequisite for developing agriculture. And then we learned how to use forethought and to plan. So recognizing and understanding the temporal relationships. So you see a flower today, well, it doesn't do you any good to come back tomorrow because it's probably still gonna be a flower. Even if it's fallen off, it's not gonna be fruit. You had to learn how to tell time to realize that, okay, it's gonna take about 3 weeks for the plant to go from flower to fruit. And that gave us a concept of time and temporal relationships. And then you had to be able to remember where you found these plants in your environment. Because if you were too challenged to remember where things were, it does you no good even to recognize the relationship because you can't exploit it. Information sharing by way of language, again, helped us to further exploit these relationships. And then we developed caching behaviors, that is saving and storing live tissue foods. Storing and utilization of plant foods gave Homo sapiens the time and freedom to develop the complex cultures that enabled us to retain, accumulate, and pass down valuable information to successive generations. And we then learned how to invent counting methodology to keep an inventory of stored foods. Because if I see a tree that has a lot of peaches on it, and I go and I gather 50 peaches, and Jeff lives next door to me, and over the next week, my peaches somehow dwindle down to 2, I have to recognize that Jeff is still in my peaches. But I can only do that if I can count. And then ultimately we invented agriculture and the ability to cultivate crops for specific properties that they have. And ultimately DNA is the quintessential information molecule. This is a book called The Information by Gleek. When seen in this light, flowers can be understood to simply be nature's engine for the transmission of genetic information necessary for making new plants and ensuring that humans always had food. Rather than hunter-gatherers, humans were essentially always information gatherers. And flowers may well have been our original information technology that programmed and changed us. This is what made us so successful as a species and so adaptable that we could efficiently gather the information necessary for survival and then effectively translate, encode, and transmit this information to successive generations and to other members of our tribe through the use of language and our created cultures. The genius of the human species has been our ability to understand and decipher, either consciously or unconsciously, the information contained in and are communicated by natural phenomena, and then to utilize that information for our own purpose and survival. Flowers helped us do that. Just to show how powerful plant foods can be, queen bees and other workers are genetically identical organisms. The way they become two different forms is by the food that they're fed. And that, again, is just pointing out how powerful food can be in helping determine who we are and how healthy we are. And also our lifespan, because worker bees live about 2 months. Queen bees can live 3 years or more. Food, of course, is not just calories, it's information. It talks to our DNA, and it tells our DNA what to do. The most powerful tool to change your health, environment, and entire world is, of course, your fork. So, in closing, I ask this question: why does green calm? Why do we look at flowers or an expanse of lush, verdant foliage and pronounce them beautiful with the warm, contented thrill of someone who feels safe and at home? Perhaps it is because our minds know what our created cultures have forgotten, that we are creatures of the plants. Our genetic history is entwined with theirs. They beckon us with their siren song of color and fragrance. It is a song made irrepressible and irresistible by our genes, which resonate to its refrain. It's as though our genes recognize in the various colors and myriad scents offerings of support, sustenance, and safekeeping. Our innate love of flowers tells us that if we want to live a healthy life on a planet that can sustain us and the earth's other inhabitants, that a plant-based diet will be seen as both our heritage and our destiny. That is the end of the lecture. Thank you, guys. I hope. Questions? So, well, the whole reason we find the smell of decomposition offensive is because it is our brain's way of saying, stay away from this. This will kill you. This will destroy your health. You want to stay away from that. those kind of compounds, and you want to gravitate towards the ones that we perceive as smelling good. So you could say that maybe that was the yang to the flower's yin. But it definitely helped us understand why these plant foods were so important. The statement was that flowers became kind of a cultural capital, and that is absolutely true. I mean, and that is one of the central arguments that I'm making, that those cultures that understood the importance and value of flowers and prized them were the ones that became successful and, again, passed their genes to successive generations, and that's why we still love and are attracted to flowers. So the question is this why flower essences work and why we are attracted to certain ones? Absolutely. Again, the things that make flowers smell good to us are the kinds of compounds that when we actually ingest them, improve our immune function, improve our fertility, make us more resistant to disease. And that is what our brain is essentially telling us, that you need to align yourself with these plant foods. You need to ingest them. You need to absorb them, because they will make you healthy and more successful as a species. Absolutely. That's a fascinating question. The question was, is there some level of consciousness within the plant that helps it to understand that by creating fragrances that we will be attracted to, that will help it have more successful pollination and spread its seeds further? I would say it's a consciousness by accident, because theoretically in nature, plants evolve these scents and these compounds randomly. But it's the ones that are effective at attracting pollinators, attracting humans, that become successful and then spread their seeds throughout the environment. So in that sense, there is some level of consciousness of the phenomenon. So her question was, certain plants grow in certain soil conditions more effectively than others. And, did we as a species become consciously aware of that? And I would say that the general answer is yes, that again, what made us so successful as a species was our ability to recognize benefits associated with certain plants. And so we, for instance, rice as a grain. Wheat, sorghum, other grains, they grow in dry conditions, but rice has to be grown in wet conditions. But because we were, again, able to recognize that this type of plant was still beneficial for us as individuals and on a society basis, we recognize that, okay, if I want to grow some rice, I can't grow it in dry environments. Got to have the wet conditions. Establishing relationships with these various plants and recognizing how and where they grow, that again is the genius of where I was talking about reading the information that the flowers were giving us, learning it, and then translating that and transmitting it to successive generations. So the question was, when it comes to the way we domesticated the wolf and turned them into dogs, what was the underlying dynamic now? And there are, again, anthropologists who have argued that the reason we domesticated wolves was so that they could hunt for us. But I don't know of any culture around the globe that uses dogs or wolves in that way necessarily. In the book that I am working on, I'm going to argue that the reason we domesticated carnivore like the wolf was because they chased away the deer and the other animals that were eating the food that we needed. That to me makes much more sense than we were going to follow them around and try to take some meat out of their mouth. I don't think they'd be very happy with us if we tried to do that. Listen, thank you guys. I hope you really enjoyed this. Let's bring the lights up.